when the specialist of the strange meets the age of darkness. Eyes in the skies will stare upon the glimmers of those scalps. And ponder the insanity that comes from their adventure. Welcome to the Bald and Bonkers.
Well, I must
Hello,
admit,
everyone.
Yes, hello.
Hello?
We're sorry we're a wee bit late, guys, but somebody was a wee bit late. But that's
Hey.
what happens, guys.
I know women are not that different in Scotland. When they tell you you gotta cook dinner, by God, you jump.
But
You
thankfully,
either
I don't
jump
have
or you
any.
end up eating ramen noodles.
But thankfully, I don't have any. So
Howdy,
I'm
Sherry.
scot-free. I'm free.
Not by choice of you.
Hey, Dobby. Hey, Drew.
Hey, what's
Hey
up,
guys,
everybody?
hey guys in the chat, guys. Listen, I would like to welcome you tonight, Drew, Living History Mysteries, and Sheriff Buford T. Cletus. What a two to get together, guys! What an amazing pair to talk about the Civil War, to talk about the spirits and strange things that roam the battlefields at night. So we've got some really interesting stuff to talk about tonight. But how are you, Drew? How are you, Sheriff? How's things?
Doing good.
Doing wonderful.
Right?
Staying busy.
You're looking. Yes, you're very, very fancy background there with the autumn leaves, you know. Because us in Scotland call it autumn, but you call it something else. But you call it fall. So you have to get here with the American accent, don't you? You know. So that everybody in the chat don't give me a row, you know. But hey, Misty Mountain. Hey, everybody in the chat. Drew's paranormal vlog. So guys, where would you like to kick off the show tonight? What would you like to start talking about the Civil War? Sheriff has a picture, guys, and it's one of the best paranormal pictures I think I've ever seen for a long time. Sheriff, would you like to show your picture?
Yeah, let me get it pulled up here.
Now we're getting an exclusive look at Sheriff's OnlyFans.
Yes. Very interesting. I must admit, when I first seen it, I thought, wow. You know, I mean, it's just, it's one of those pictures that when you see it, you know for sure that there is something when you die. You know.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
God, you can see. I mean, why don't you tell us a wee bit about this, Sheriff? This photograph and where it was, and
Well, I was in the Chickamauga battlefield and was taking pictures that day of just the cabins, you know, just random pictures to make a video out of, you know, the cabins, and actually showed inside some of the cabins, and there is bars on these cabins that you cannot get through. I mean, you literally, they're this wide. You could probably fit your arm through it, you know, for a camera.
Yeah.
And so there's no possible way anybody can get inside these cabins without a park ranger and a big bunch of keys to actually unlock the padlocks on them. So I was just randomly taking pictures of cabins, and lo and behold, pow, I was 65, 70 yards away from this cabin, and there it was. It just kind of floored me
the
too.
detail's amazing. The detail on it is amazing. I mean, see, when you zoom out, you can also see her standing. You pointed out before the guys, obviously before the live, we were all talking and looking at this photograph. But it's like, wow. I mean, let's see if some of the chat guys, can you see in the chat that stand? I can't. She pointed out to me, I can see it. it's weird. It's like a kind of misty type kind of like figure, isn't it?
Yeah, like right here.
There's a few.
Yeah,
Right here's one.
yeah.
If I zoom in, you can actually see Native American right here.
And you see that? You can actually see his nose and his eyes and his
Mouth,
just,
yeah.
and his kind of feathers, the kind of feathers that they would have. That's, oh my god, that is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
What's your
It's just one of those things. I mean, literally, I was just sitting there 65, 70 yards away because I wanted to get the whole cabin and the cannon, in the picture.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I was far enough back to be able to capture everything. And lo and behold, it's got all that in it too.
And I must say, for everybody listening in the podcast, guys, you need to come and check our YouTube channel out, because obviously, Dakota, do you think, could you send us a copy of this picture maybe, and we can maybe put it up in the YouTube comment section, so as people, is there any way, Dakota, we could show this to the people in the podcast side? No?
Yeah.
Because it's just phenomenal.
Not really for how we
Yeah.
share it out, for how that works.
Yeah. So, MD, listen to this, guys. Check out the live. Check out the upload. It's
Misty's Mountain Man. Misty's Mountain Man had made a comment. It looks like a child in the doorway, and that's what we were looking at before the stream started.
Yeah.
Was he looked to be 10 or 11 years old, very small, but the way he's standing there and he's looking up, it's like he very well could either be holding hands with an adult or standing next to an adult that's out of the frame behind the wall, just kind of looking at him.
Yeah.
But clearly, when Sheriff zooms into this picture, it is clearly the apparition of a small boy standing in the doorway of that cabin.
You can see him looking up as if he's looking up somebody or something.
Yeah.
It's an absolute fantastic.
And then, of course, right here beside him, you can see an actual tombstone. And I'm telling you, there's nothing on the other side of that cabin that would even resemble anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, it could be,
exactly.
It could be the tombstone of his brother.
Mr. Mountain
Man. It could be the tombstone of a friend. So you never know what the meaning of the tombstone is.
It's really spooky, actually, isn't it? What's your thoughts, Dakota? It's just so eerie, and I've never seen a good photograph like this before.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. That's. See this
And
battle. How many men were killed here?
Oh golly!
Would you say?
I knew I should have.
Would you say?
You're making them think. Stop doing that.
Probably. I'm making them think. I couldn't help it. I had to ask the question.
Oh dear God, his hat's going to catch fire.
Oh my God!
Whoosh.
I have been in this battlefield a gazillion times because I literally lived like 5 minutes away from it, and
I'm really bad for that. I apologize. It must have been over
it was an
a few
actual
thousand then.
It was an actual 3-day battle, so they lost quite a few.
Oh my, right.
It's not the bloodiest battle, but it's one of the bloodiest battles. The name Chickamauga actually came from the Indian word "river of blood."
Yeah.
That's how. That's
right.
and
So obviously
basically
it was
because the Creeks.
Who won?
Creeks had turned.
Who? So who?
It was
who actually
a Confederate
won?
victory. Chickamauga was a
Right,
Confederate
so it was a
victory.
Confederate victory.
Yeah, they were actually on their way to Chattanooga to defend Chattanooga.
Would you?
It
That's
looks
just-
like about 34,500 casualties. 16,170 for the Union and 18,454 for the Confederates.
That's just.
Yeah, I mean
that's
you're
just quite a thing to get your head.
and you have to also think, these guys were looking each other in the eye when they were shooting at each other. I mean, they
That's
were
right, that's what
they
you're
were
saying.
that close. They could see the whites of each other's eyes. I mean, they were that close. And that's where people don't realize just how fierce these battles were, because I mean, you're that close. Or you have to go across a field that's a mile long in open ground to try to get to a point.
But it must have been intense because they were using muskets. I take it that's what they were using, muskets.
Yeah.
So they would have to load it, shoot it, and then they would have to load it again while the other guy was doing the exact same thing.
Yes,
And they were getting closer and closer and closer and closer.
And you had to be proficient enough to be able to load that thing and fire it 3 times in 60 seconds.
Oh my god.
Yep.
That's when people get this in their head, they're like, okay, well, they're firing. Yeah, they have to reload. No, it's just that quick.
I know the officers, they had pistols, didn't they? They had pistols.
Well, there were some that were actual, the infantrymen just had pistols. The artillery people had pistols.
When did a question for both guests doing the boat? When did, let's say, the Enfield rifles actually, the repeater rifles, when did they actually come into the war? Was that near the end of the war? The repeating rifles, the ones that did the bullets? Was that more?
The Sharps and the...
Yeah, the repeating rifles, the rolling block rifles that were much easier to reload. Because everything, I mean, the whole reload process, like with an Enfield or a Springfield rifle, number one, you had to have teeth, which wasn't exactly a very popular thing back then. They didn't have a lot of really good dentists around back then.
Yeah.
So I mean, you had to literally grab that cartridge out of your cartridge pack, rip it off in your teeth, dump your powder. And then a lot of them wouldn't even dump the ball. They would just cram the paper and the ball right down in there with it with their ramrod and fire. Where with the rolling block and stuff, when you fired, you dropped that lever and just pulled another cartridge out, slid it in, and when you pulled it up, that rolling block cut the end off of it. You put your cap on, refired. That increased your speed a little bit. But then when your repeating rifles came out, like your Henrys and stuff, or the Sharps repeater, when they came out, they were just that real quick boom, 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 boom. And I mean, it was like having it was like having 10 or 12 guys for every one with a single shot musket. Now, as for the pistols, a lot of your guys would carry an extra cylinder, so they would empty their 6 shots out. They'd pull that cylinder out, grab another cylinder out of their bag, slip it in there, put it in there, and boom, boom, boom. They were right back at it again. Already had the caps loaded on it, everything. Yeah. So that increased the speed a little bit, but it was still. Yeah. I mean, especially when you take into consideration grape shot and stuff like that your enemy was firing out of their cans.
I suppose in a way, Dave,
you're knocking out.
I suppose in a way, Dave, see with the cannons. I take it the cannons would just be firing into the. See when the cannons were firing, did the cannons fire while the troops were fighting against them? Because obviously they would have got some sides.
Oh yeah, right? I mean they when they were making their advances, they were firing on them as they were advancing toward the line. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't no, well, we're going to fire and then we'll stop.
Right.
No, if you have Confederate or Union coming at you like this, they're continually shelling you, trying to wipe you out to stop you, to keep you from getting to their men.
Right.
And if you got into the short range distance, then they were using canister shot. Well, those canister shot had probably 35, 40 steel balls in them.
Right.
So when they came out, it was just like a big, huge shotgun.
That's I can just think of that because it was when we last did Drew, and Drew was telling us about what was the battlefield you were telling us about. Where it was, what was it? Was it 30 miles wide? Was that Gettysburg? I mean,
which one?
was it, what was the one that was it nearly 30 miles long or something like that? What was the battlefield that was?
Oh no, Gettysburg. It was like 17 square miles or something like that.
Yeah.
When people go to Gettysburg, they think of the Gettysburg Battlefield National Park as being the battlefield. But what they don't realize is the entire town of Gettysburg, the battlefield, the area around the battlefield.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all battlefield.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was you. You didn't just say, "Well, we're going to fight here." No, it was fought where it could be fought.
I mean, the carnage alone. I mean, some of what that must have done to the human body. I mean, it must have just been diabolical. I mean, can you imagine what that was like?
It was actually a Civil War veteran that actually got shot in the forehead, had a big hole in his forehead, and survived it.
Really?
Yes, he
Oh
lived
my God.
with that hole in his forehead.
Wow. Dakota, would you like to ask?
I don't know, mate. If you got anything, keep going. I'm lost for words here.
I know. I'm just.
You know, and it's like you're talking about the repeating rifles.
Yeah.
Well, what people didn't realize, it wasn't the infantry that carried those repeaters. It was the cavalry. They're sitting on a horseback riding full blazing at you, and I mean, they're popping off rounds just one right after the other, and ain't nothing you can do about it. Just hope and pray that you can load that rifle just as fast as they're shooting and try to shoot them off the horses.
I mean, the spirits that must linger about those battlefields must be intense, because you think about when a lot of them were taken to like field hospitals. Can you imagine? I mean, I watched a program on this, and they actually showed you pictures, black and white photos of piles of legs and arms. I mean, that must have just been intense. And what did you do with?
If you get a chance, look up pictures for. It'll be on Antietam Battlefield.
Right.
Look at the sunken road. You want to talk about bodies piled up? That's one of them where it was.
Oh my God.
There was a fence on either side of the road, and they didn't stand a chance.
That's what was it? Drew, could you tell us again? Mind you were on Bald and Bonkers not that long ago. Can you tell us again about the kind of? You told us something about there was actually rotten corpses lying everywhere. I mean, it was that bad. It was.
Oh,
it was,
yeah.
The ground was blood and.
Hey, Sherry. Gettysburg. A lot of people don't realize that much like today, the military does not pick up their mess when they leave. And when the armies pulled out of Gettysburg, it was wall-to-wall corpses. It was horses, it was artillery pieces, it was wagons, it was humans, weapons, everywhere. And it was up to the people of Gettysburg to start cleaning up the mess. And the place reeked of decomposure for months afterwards. I mean, you figure in July in Pennsylvania, the hot sun, it's 90 plus degrees. These bodies are just laying here rotting. And not that half of them are opened up or in pieces. Still to this day, still to this day, people put a room addition on a house, they build a garage, put in a pool. They're digging up a part of a wheel, a part of a cannon carriage, a barrel off a gun, a human bone, something. I mean, the story I heard was they could smell the smell of burning bodies clear to Pittsburgh.
My God.
So, it was that bad. And they just piled everybody up and set them on fire, piled all the horses and stuff up, set them on fire. They did their best to find bodies that were at least somewhat assembled, to put them in the graveyards and put them in graves. A lot of guys were buried in mass graves in different locations. It was terrible. I mean, it was nothing like war is today. It was so much more horrendous than it is today.
It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder about the energies that place must attract. And I'm talking maybe like buildings nearby. I'm wondering if there any evil entities have been ever attracted to that. Has any of you ever heard of that as like demonic kind of?
I've never heard anything, like that. But but how can it not be? How can it not have hauntings of some kind? Because of how horrific it was and how sudden it was. It's like on the day of Pickett's charge.
Yeah.
They literally heard the cannon fire in Washington, D.C., 80 miles away.
That's wow. I mean,
So
I can't even imagine what that would be like. I just can't imagine how terrible. Because I look at the soldiers. It's just to think that was the last time they were on the battlefield. And that was that. They're stuck there now.
Well, I just recently did a video on the Battle of Newmarket, and they put in 257 Virginia Military Institute cadets into that battle. They lost 10 and had 45 wounded, but they still captured that hill without being given orders to leave their spot. They done it under their own fruition and captured those cannons. It was considered a Confederate victory.
That's amazing.
When we were at Gettysburg, October of last year, when we done the paranormal investigation and the history of Gettysburg, we walked Pickett's charge, and in October, I mean the last week of October, walking that distance, that was mind blowing in itself. But think these men walked this in the middle of summer, dressed in wool.
Yeah,
with bullets coming at them and artillery pieces firing on them, and they had to concentrate on what they were doing enough to be able to fire and reload while they were making this march, this distance across this open field.
Yeah,
and it's mind-boggling to think that what was going through the minds of those men and boys, those sons, brothers, fathers, daddies, grandpas that were crossing that field, looking at their impending doom.
Yeah,
firing on them.
Out the two of you on your ghost investigations, what kind of spirits have you encountered? I'll ask Sheriff first. What kind of spirits have you encountered?
Mostly it's been some civilian.
Right.
A few soldiers here and there, but it's been mostly civilian. But they were at the battle, when it happened.
Yeah.
And they were, being nurses and carrying soldiers off the field, for the hospitals and stuff like that. And they were getting killed just as much as the people that were fighting the battles.
That's right.
So that's basically I think probably the best spirit that I've come in contact with so far is Colonel John Mosby.
Right.
And I was asked to do a video through Spirit Box communication and stuff like that for his men, because his men were captured and they were really done wrong.
Yeah.
They were executed wrongly. And so I did the video and everything, and believe it or not, it actually helped them cross over.
That's good. It's good. It's good to think that some spirits have been helped, but it's, in a way, you think about the spirits that are stuck in a loop. They're marching, dying, and they're just replaying that loop over and over again for probably ever.
Yeah.
What about you, Drew? What type of spirits have you come into contact, Drew?
Well, the only battlefield that I've been to is Gettysburg so far. And I actually just re-released our Gettysburg investigation video last week or 2 weeks ago. I've got new technology that I had that I didn't have last year, so I ran everything back through word recognition and stuff like that again. And I re-released that video. People had asked me if I was going to go back to another battlefield, and as for the spirits, most of the contact that we had was at Devil's Den, Sniper's Nest. Because I also had Mark with me, who is a reenactor for Verdun sharpshooters, and he had on his green Verdun hat, and there's a lot of really good EVP reactions to a lot of our questions. Some are very, very direct. One of them that sticks out in my mind, we're sitting there at Sniper's Nest, and one of us say, "Are we surrounded?" And straight up, the spirit box says, "You see them?"
No, that's amazing.
And then all of a sudden, you start hearing in the background. It's 34 degrees or 37 degrees. There are no crickets out at 37 degrees, but all of a sudden it just fires up.
Yeah.
And we're like, you even hear me and Mark talking off camera. It's like, it's too cold for crickets. Why are we hearing what we're hearing right now? I mean, it's just that place blew me away. I can't wait to go back and do another part, or do a part 2 on that place.
See how you said they were making noises and that. Do you think that they know they're dead, or they're stuck in a kind of time loop? They're stuck in a time loop where it's like they maybe seen you and thought, "Who's this guy? There's a battle about to commence, right?" And thought, "Look, we need to get rid of this guy. He's standing in front of us. There's a battle coming." Do you think they're maybe stuck in a kind of a loop in time?
What do you think, Sheriff? That's a really good question, and that's something I've thought about a lot. Do you think they're just kind of residual and looping, or do you think time actually means something?
Well, I would tend to say yes, it would be residual, but it's like if they're standing there and and they bump their comrade that's to the right or left of them, go, who are these guys? What are they doing here? We're fixing to start fighting. We've never seen any people that look like this before. Yeah. It could be one of those situations.
Or is it like see that then you get into this kind of field? Could it be a slip in the time field? See how like maybe they're ready to fight, right? Right now they're ready to fight. This very moment they're ready to fight, and then you come walking in with your ghost hunting gear, and they're like, "Who's this guy?" And it might be like some type of like time slip. No for them, but for you.
Right.
That's maybe what you're seeing is maybe something that happened to them. But when they see it, it's in their time. If you get my drift, you see what I'm trying to say.
This is a very bad example, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but I need to say this while it's fresh on my diabetic mind.
Yeah.
I remember an old episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yep.
When a couple members of the Enterprise tried to go on board a Romulan ship, and they got stuck in some kind of a tachyon burst or something that split the space-time continuum. Well, they could see each other, and they could see the Romulan that got stuck in that burst, but nobody else on either ship could see them.
Yeah.
And I can't help but wonder if maybe that's the situation with like a spirit that went through something horrible like that, is they can see us, but we can't always see them because it's almost, it's a split in time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know.
It's been that traumatic. It's done something to the space-time. Say I wander through the battlefield with my torch and my gear and all that. They're like, who's that? With strange looking devices and that. Maybe they think he's a spirit from beyond.
Right.
But to me, they're the spirit from beyond. What would you like to say, Dakota? Because I know you've got something.
No, I was just going to say,
he's thinking.
Kind of going on Drew's time slip theory. It makes you wonder if any of soldiers managed to, say, like, jot down in a journal that they saw what we would recognize as a paranormal investigator.
Yes.
You know, they jot it down, but obviously, when you got to think about that time, they'll obviously be brushed off as shell shock.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
We seen a strange guy. Oh, I can't believe this is the guy. He's in the hospital, recovering from his wounds for the battle. Well, last night I seen these people coming towards me with like shiny things in their hands.
Right.
Right.
And they were like futuristic clothes and stuff like that, right? They would think he was mad. Oh, he's got shell shock, send him home.
Well,
if the whole battle is stuck in a time loop, and not just the individuals, but the cannons and the artillerymen that got blown up, and the horses running around that got shot. And I mean, if that whole battle is a time loop, and they, you would think, what Dakota said would be somewhat true, is because they would be going on about their normal lives. The battle has just raged on for 157 years, but they have no concept of that time. So
to them,
who knows?
To them, it's just happening.
They could be writing in their journal saying, "Hey, I mean, what Dakota said, is very, there's a very good possibility that they're writing in that journal, seen weird men on the battlefield tonight. They didn't seem to react to the bullets flying around them. I'm very confused, but I mean, who knows? Do they go on about their personal lives in the afterlife, or is it constant battle?
But it's maybe been that traumatic. It's been that traumatic. What has happened to all the death? It's done something to like the time. It's like when you get a haunted house, right, and people will be like, the ghost walked right through the wall and disappeared, right? But maybe like 200 years before that, there was a doorway in that wall. So the spirit's probably walking. Right, let's take Dakota. He's walking about his house now, right, doing his normal kind of stuff, and he sees a strange guy, futuristic guy, with equipment, walk through as if it's the wall, right, and think, oh my god, I've seen a ghost, right? But in this time zone, in the newer time zone, when that happened, it was a ghost hunting team, right? And they walked through a door that was in the wall, that had been put in the wall. You see where I'm trying to go with this?
Yeah.
It's as if it's some type of slip. It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's like...
Well, then again, I actually had something happen to me first time being on a battlefield. I was at the Battle of New Market on the battlefield facing where the cadets came from, where they charged from. I actually was standing on that battlefield, broad daylight, and I could see those boys charging that hill.
Right.
I could see them, as if I was standing there at this cannon firing at them.
See, it makes
But
you wonder.
I'm
could they see
seeing
you?
these boys run up this hill, and I'm coming as hard as they can come. And as soon as they met up with the Union soldiers, it was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your thoughts, Dakota?
It's definitely interesting. Here's a question for you guys. What do you guys think of the videos of Teslas driving through Gettysburg and their sensors picking
That's
up
right.
people all around them?
How could it not be?
Yeah.
I mean, with as much death and people that fell in that battle, how could it not be? I mean, how could it not happen?
Yeah. I've seen that what Dakota's talking about. There was a case where there was a family, I don't know where in the United States it was, sorry about that, but they were driving through like a graveyard at night, and Tesla, it was like on self-drive or something like that, and on the screen it showed the stick figures. You know how you get with the, was it the
SLS?
Yes, the SLS. It come up with these stick figures on the road, and the car actually stopped because it was and then you could actually see the stick figures walking away towards gravestones and then just disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
So is that spirits?
I never had we didn't have anything like that happen in Gettysburg, but I will tell you one thing. The night that Mark and I went out, which was the very first night when we went out to Devil's Den and Sniper's Nest and stuff, when we got back to the hotel, we'd only been back at the hotel maybe 15 minutes. I had just changed into my pajama pants and crawled into bed. I was sleeping in the bed closest to the window.
Right.
And I actually heard that click, 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 click.
Yeah.
And the more I sat and thought about it, it's like, it sounds like a horseshoe going through our parking lot. And I got up, jumped out of the bed, opened up the door, and I could hear it clear down at the end of the building, rounding the building, going through the parking lot. And the more I thought about it, the more that I went to the reenactments and was listening to people walking. When we were in a city park or something doing it, and the guys would cross the concrete with their heel and toe plates on their boots. It was steel plates hitting concrete that I was hearing. So men were obviously just on patrol or walking, checking out buildings, whatever used to be on that site, which we were only like 2 blocks away from the Jenny Wade house. So there was a lot of activity, and that was all still open battlefield. But I was hearing the steel plates on the modern ground instead of the old grass or whatever was there 157 years ago.
That's
and I wish I would have had a recorder, because now I have a voice recorder. I could have grabbed it and beep, and actually probably recorded it, but I didn't have a voice recorder at that time.
Well, that's just like a slip in time, isn't it? To that horse and whoever was riding that horse, to them they were galloping through a field or a muddy road, right? But to you, because it's like a tarred car park, that is just, oh my god, that is just so fascinating. It's just so fascinating, Dakota. Would you?
It certainly is interesting. Like I said, it certainly makes me wonder if there isn't some sort of journal out there that's essentially describing people from today just walking out in front of gunfire, and people going like, "What the hell?"
Aye, there's maybe a journal that they're saying there was a strange character. He had a wee beard, and he smoked a lot of cigars, and he had this torch, and he was walking.
They talk funny.
Wouldn't that just be fascinating as hell?
Right?
It would be. Most definitely.
Oh man, can I ask you? Out of all the battles, right? Let's jump to this now. See, out of all the battles of the Civil War, which one would you say between the two of you was the worst battle. The
Gettysburg.
worst. What's that?
Gettysburg.
Gettysburg.
So that, no, that's where the war kind of turned round, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
yeah. Do you think?
Well,
I wonder how the war.
Gettysburg was the main turning point of the war. And, you know, if the Confederates would have won that battle, we would be flying a Confederate flag right now.
Yeah.
They would have went straight to Washington.
I
But
wonder why they didn't.
they got stopped. Superior
Why-
forces, superior planning. You know, there's actually, for the longest time, there was a show on Netflix. And I know you guys all got Netflix. Netflix is worldwide now.
Yeah.
Like Pornhub.
Why did my EMF just spike when you said Pornhub?
Oh my god!
But
Oh, too funny.
sat down and I
my God.
found this show one evening because I watch the shows I want to watch after the wife goes to sleep, and I found this show
Do you
and
watch
it was called Confederate States of America, and it was a pun show. What the world would be like today if the Confederates would have won the war. And I mean, it had a bunch of racial commercials in it where me and my wife and kids, we love sitting around the house, and we got little Sambo here cooking our dinner for us, and they got a little black kid cooking on the grill for him and stuff like that. And you know, he's got a black maid and a black butler and everything.
But
And they show a Confederate flag flying above the White House,
But that's the thing. Maybe in an alternate reality, the Confederacy did win. That's the mad thing. There might be a world out there, because they say we're the one. There'll be somebody out there sitting in the room with a blue top on. I've got a red top on the new. Dakota will be sitting with a head of hair for his, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
It's.
I think Dakota would look good with a head full of hair.
I
Down
think he
to
would
his
too.
shoulders. And
He's
stuff.
got a couple of wigs, you know. He's got a couple of wigs. He looks that he puts on sometimes, you know. But
You know, the thing that could have won the battle for the Confederacy
Yeah.
is if Lee and Longstreet would have conveyed the other generals' messages to each other. If Lee and Longstreet would have conveyed to each other, because they were telling them we need to go around to the right to come in behind them. That was the only way that the Confederacy could have beat them, was to come in and behind them and come up from behind to capture little Round Top and Big Round Top.
yeah.
Yep,
On the
flank the
possible way.
Union forces.
That was the only way possible, and it was an open way to get to them. Is what was crazy, and they didn't move on that notion.
I bet there was a lot of weapons developed though. I bet there was a lot of weapons developed in the Civil War. What kind of weird weapons were developed in the Civil War? I bet there was, because you were talking about the submarine. You were talking about the submarine before we come on live. Would you like to tell everybody about that?
They actually have a
one of
pistol. It's called the Lamat.
Right.
It's a revolver and a shotgun too.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, I found that quite interesting what you were saying, Drew, about Sheriff, about the submarine that was found with the skeletons still sitting in place.
Yeah, the H.L. Hunley.
I mean, that's amazing how that's kept, how they've actually kept. How they've actually, because I thought in the water, bodies just dissolved, the bones eventually dissolved away. So it must have been all sealed up.
Well, you know, the temperature of the water has a lot to do with that, you know, in that case. So.
Yeah. It also depends on the depth of the water, the pressure. That's why you don't find any bones around the Titanic now. It is because the currents, the pressure, the quantity of salt in the water.
Yes.
One of my favorite weapons, and Sheriff's probably, he might have even seen this before, down in Georgia, on a courthouse square, sits a double-barrel cannon. And what they would do is they would put 2 balls in these barrels with a chain connecting them.
Well, yeah.
And they would fire these simultaneously, and they would just rip through a crowd of people.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was, and they only made just a couple of them. They couldn't get the barrels. I don't know if men weren't intelligent enough back then or the timing wasn't right, but they couldn't get the barrels to fire at the same time. So this thing would spin instead of shooting straight like they wanted to. So, but it's still sitting on that courthouse square down in Georgia.
The one that I liked, the invention that I always find fascinating, which I was talking to you before you come on, was the first type of battleship. The first type, what were they called? What were they called again?
Ironclads.
Ironclads. I mean, they were. I mean, I watched a program about that. I mean, the cannonballs just bounced off them. I mean, it must have been weird sitting inside that. What are the cannonballs just bouncing off?
I guarantee you it would be ringing your ears. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's really funny. They got the idea of the ironclad ship from the USS Constitution battleship, which was an old sailing ship, and they called her Old Ironsides because she was made out of such thick oak beams on the side that cannonballs fired would just bounce off those oak beams. Well, they thought, okay, if we can improve on this design and make it an actual iron vessel, then even close range shot would not penetrate.
Just
and yeah, they just bong like a big bell, bong like Sheriff said. It would definitely ring your bell on the inside. I mean, you imagine taking a BB now and shooting a piece of tin with it. Could you imagine what a 20-pound ball sounded like hitting a 1-inch thick iron plate?
Yeah, that was
ring for days.
Ring for days. I think a lot of them after the war probably couldn't hear after it. Like hearing damage. I mean, it's just so. It's sad though to think that we went to war. Well, the American Civil War happened because you think of all the innocent people that died in that war. You think about the country was torn apart. I mean, it was.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is most people's misconception is that the war was started over slavery. It was not.
No.
It didn't come into play until Lincoln's second term.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's the way history plays out. There's the people in power play out the history, you know. Because me and Dakota, we do a lot of the UFO stuff and that, and a lot of that's been covered up. But it's starting to come out now. And it's like way that war, a lot of the history was covered up. But now it's starting to come out. The truth is starting to come out. Like, as you say, the slavery and other kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and basically what it was is the South wanted to govern themselves and continue living like they were.
Yes.
You know, but the Union did not want that to happen. They wanted it to be all under one united front.
Was the South no famous for their cotton industry and their other industries that were famous for making stuff?
Yeah.
I was actually just going to bring that up. And you mentioned that, Chris. The war was actually more over taxes and tariffs. You know, when the South pulled away and wanted to start their own country, the North is like, no, we need your raw material. We have industry. We have industry. You have the raw material. We're going to tax you more if you're separated from us. Mm-hmm. And the South is like, oh no, you're not. And you know, the much like Sheriff said, you know, and I have to emphasize the fact he has more knowledge about the Civil War
Yes.
than I do.
Yeah.
And he's very, very knowledgeable about it. And I could sit and listen to him for hours. But they wanted the right, which was a constitutional right, to break away and govern themselves.
Yeah.
And the Union said, no, you don't have that right. Well, it's spelled out right in the Constitution. I mean, it don't necessarily directly say you have the right to secede if you feel like you're not being represented properly by your government.
Yeah.
But it does, in a roundabout way, say that if you don't feel that you're being equally represented or properly represented, you have the right to take the next action.
Yeah.
And that's what South did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is... But here's a question, because we've only got really about 10 minutes left, Sheriff. Can you tell us something really interesting about the Civil War that not many historians talk about? I had to ask it. You know?
Oh, there's plenty that historians don't talk about. They leave a lot out.
Could you tell us
Because they, you know, and I don't knock none of these historians, but they don't put in the whole truth on stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they'll put majority of the truth in, but then they have to try to fabricate a little bit. An interesting thing that I found out doing research was the surrender at Appomattox.
Right.
What people don't realize is Grant called that meeting between him and General Lee because Grant was getting his butt tore up by the South with less men.
Really?
I mean, they were, every time they turned around, they were getting a whipping put on them by the South.
Right.
Now, granted, I don't take nothing from the North. They won their battles too.
Yeah.
But when it came down to it, Grant was going to surrender first. But Grant, being the gentleman in the meeting, offered Lee to speak first, and that's when Lee surrendered.
Right.
So it was actually going to be the other way around, because Grant was getting his butt handed to him, so to speak.
That's actually... Can you imagine if that had happened? How it would have turned out?
It's just like Drew said. Yeah, there had been a Confederate flag flying over Washington, D.C., you know, the capital. It's just one of those things that, well, here's another one. Lee and Grant both went to West Point.
I heard that. I did hear
They both went to West Point, studied the same tactics and everything else. But here is why Lee got the better of Grant, is because Lee took his knowledge and went back to Napoleon on how he fought battles.
Right.
And so, you know, how can you counter something that you know nothing about? So if you know, Grant not knowing that Lee's using this tactic, well, how's he going to counter his move? So that's how the South did as much as they did with less men, because of those actual tactics on how to maneuver and put people in place the right way. Grant did the right thing. I mean, he did. You know, I don't take nothing from either side.
Yeah.
But it's just mind-boggling that both men studied at the same place, same teachings and everything, and boom, you know, he goes back further in time and picks up these strategies and starts using them.
That's fascinating. I mean, I did not know that about the surrender. Because it's always been portrayed. When I was young, when I went to local school, we did the American Civil War. We were always taught the opposite for what you told us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there. I mean, it's there. You really have to dig for it, but you can find it.
Like, I always, what was it the Confederacy when they did give up? What was it? The leader fled with the gold. What was it? And he was dressed as a woman.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. So he did dress as a woman to flee, and he was caught. He was
There's
eventually caught, wasn't he?
There's actually a gentleman at a cemetery we just done an investigation on not very long ago, and he was part of the unit that captured the president of the Confederacy and Jefferson Davis. And he even wrote down in his journal that when he was found, he was dressed in full women's attire to not be recognized.
Wow. Is it true? Is
Now,
it true that
here's
that they had... Go on, you go, Drew. You go.
I was going to say, now here's a little something a lot of people don't know. I know worldwide everybody is hearing about the search for the Confederate gold.
Yeah.
What happened to the Confederate gold? It was never found.
Mm-hmm.
A general who's from the state of Michigan. Now, understand, Sheriff, what did an officer make a month during the Civil War?
Jeez.
Roughly.
Maybe $25. Maybe.
Okay, $25 a month. Let's say that's dead on accurate. The war waged for 4 years, 1861 to 1865. A general from the state of Michigan who was instrumental in the apprehension of Jefferson Davis came home, had a $150,000 house built, opened a bank.
That's right.
And all this on $25 a month.
I heard about
and
this.
It's actually recorded. He paid cash.
I heard about this. Was there no a couple of them, and they were all friends, because there was a no. It was the search for Civil War gold that was on the History Channel, and there was a train that was meant to have and that was meant to have been dumped.
They found the train.
Yeah.
The train is actually buried on the shores of Lake Michigan. They done metal detecting and found it, and they dug down and actually found the stack buried on Lake Michigan, right on the shoreline where the winds from the lake had pushed the sand back over the tracks, the train, everything. So yes, they actually found that train.
It makes you wonder, somewhere in the United States there could be a big pile of gold somewhere buried.
There's a couple of different spots
Well,
there in Idaho I can go.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, there's it could be hidden, along with a cache of guns, cannons, cannonball, all the ammo you could ever want. But where is it?
Where is it? That is. I mean, it makes you wonder. I mean, to think that there's somewhere in the United States right now. What was after the Civil War? What was the price of the gold? Would you say was worth? Was it $15 million or something? Today's money, it'd be more, obviously.
Oh, it'd be in the billions nowadays.
It'd be in the billions. So say even if they've spent say 10 million of it, there's still probably about a couple billion left buried somewhere. Dakota's going to be out the night with his lamp and his spade.
If I was over there, man,
it's. I mean, oh my God! Can you imagine all that gold sitting where it could be?
Well, you can't do any kind of metal detecting in or around any of the battlefields unless they are designated. You can hunt there.
But let's face it. Would they bury it in a battlefield?
Well, let's put it this way: you get caught on a Civil War battlefield with a metal detector, they'll bury you under the jail.
Yeah. But
it is hallowed ground. You don't go doing that mess.
You're thinking about this. You think about all that gold, right? You think about how much room that gold will take up, right? It's going to have to be somewhere that was accessible. I mean, it's no as if they've got to go in the middle of the woods and bury it in there, because it would just be pointless.
It could be in the middle of the woods in a cave that has flat.
There you go. There's an experiment for you. Try and contact one of the ghosts through the ghost box and ask them where it's buried.
They ain't gonna tell you. They took it to the
That's
grave. They took it to the grave for a reason.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the biggest things about the Confederate gold is nobody can agree how much there was.
Yeah.
There was supposed to be 52 bars. Some people say there was only 26 bars. Only 26 bars were turned in, which makes no sense because count for inflation from 1865 to 2021. They're saying that gold was there were supposed to be 52 50-pound bars.
Who owns the
So
gold?
it'd come out to like $55 million today.
Right.
So
Say you found out where the gold was. Who owns the gold? Is it U.S. Treasury? Is it rightfully the United States Treasury?
Depends on where you found it.
That's very true. But what if you dug it up in a field in North Carolina or something like that?
If it's your property, it's your gold.
Do you know have to?
Yep.
Do you know have to? Because I know with that program, the Civil War gold, that they thought it was in the lake. They actually thought it was in there, but they had to get permission for the government. You've got to give a certain amount back to the United States government.
the state of Michigan wouldn't grant it.
Yeah.
They were
So
going
it
to
makes
go.
you
They were
wonder.
going to go diving for it.
That's right. I mean, it makes you wonder. It's probably underneath. It's not very deep under the water. But people will say this, and people will be like, "That's that. We need to hire a boat."
It
Don't do
literally could be in 10 foot of water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It could
Yeah.
be in 4 foot of water.
Yeah.
Who's to
It
say?
could be underneath. It could be in a grave in a battlefield.
There you go.
I
And
mean,
there's no
think about it,
possible
why
way.
would you-
There's no possible way you could find that.
It would be the perfect place to bury it if you think about it, in a mass grave in a
Yep.
battlefield, because then nobody's going to dig up a mass grave.
mean,
you knew.
Unless like the daughters of the daughters of the Confederacy or the daughters of the Union got special permission to have it done, and actually to bury each and every one of the soldiers that were in a mass grave.
No.
It ain't gonna happen.
No.
I mean, it literally takes just about an act of Congress to make something like that happen.
Yeah.
And it's like Drew said, these people over in Gettysburg, they're building on additions to their houses, digging up the ground for the pool, and they're finding these bodies, or bones and stuff like that. They have to stop right there. They can't dig any further, can't do anything until these bones are all found.
It would be an interesting experiment. See, you went to a battlefield and you got your ghost box out, your raptor box, or whatever it is you use, and you asked them. You said, "Right, where's the gold hidden?" Just to see what they would say. To see what they would say.
The
There's
thing
the-
that
what he's thinking about.
the thing you're going to have to do is it's not going to work probably on the battlefield.
Yeah.
You're going to have to find those commanders that knew about it
And go to their graves and ask them.
and actually go to their grave sites and ask that.
I mean, thinking
I've
goodness that
always
one
wanted
could
to
do.
find out. I always wanted to find out the exact coordinates where Jefferson Davis was captured. Not a roundabout, but the exact coordinates where him and his men were intercepted.
Yep.
And
It
I
would
mean,
be-
you
it
know,
would
the
be.
battle. You know, there was a skirmish. People had to die.
Oh yeah.
If you
I would love
walk
that.
in there and you say, yeah, I mean, if you walk in there, you say those damn Yankees got all the gold. If the South is ever going to rise again, we need to figure out where that gold was at.
Mm-hmm.
And hope and pray somebody speaks up and says, well, we heard them talking, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's good to think about it, but I don't think it'll be found in our time. You know, it might be found one day. One day,
Howdy, Boomer.
you know. I mean, it might be found
Hey,
one
Boomer.
day. But guys, it's been great having you, and that's the end of the hour, isn't it, Dakota? Would you like to say anything, Dakota, about our new merchandise and stuff? We've got merchandise now.
Ah, yes.
Oh, cool.
Just in time for the holidays because somebody
Mhm.
misread messages in our comments. We have started putting together some comments. God damn it. Start putting together some merchandise. I'm going to put the link in the description here. It's also in our flow page. We're going to try to add a little bit more to it. You can get
Yeah.
our two sexy faces all over your body.
I know.
Have a little bet,
More
see
could
who
you
buys that
possibly
more.
want to have our two faces on a t-shirt?
Well, I know a
Big
spot
gap.
where we can get underwear printed with our faces on it, so.
I was just going to ask if you guys were getting boxer shorts with your faces on each butt cheek.
Oh my god!
I know where we can do it.
Oh my god!
Right down the center, I would put my two favorite turds. Right there with Bald and
Oh
Bonkers
my.
underneath it. I would go out and get my
We might do
mail
that, actually.
wearing
That's
nothing
actually
but
pretty
those
good.
boxer
That's-
shorts.
I tell you something. We need to do that. We need to get that
We're
made
gonna-
up. You know, send Drew and Sheriff a free pair. Oh my god!
I love
just
you
don't
guys.
know.
You're so much fun.
Have
Oh,
just one
I
of us
know.
sitting on the crotch going like this.
Oh my god!
This one's a dick and this one's an asshole. And together, they're a perfect pair.
Oh my god!
Oh,
Oh Jesus! I just don't know. Oh dear.
Oh,
We
me.
need,
Oh
we
my
need, we need to bring out a batch of them actually, and you two, you and the Sheriff Drew, you should bring out your own.
Might
know,
have to. Might have to
It
think
might
about
happen.
that.
Listen, guys, in the chat, please visit Sheriff Buford T. Cletus' channel, and please visit Drew's Living History Mysteries. And that's for the people on Spotify and Amazon and all the other places this goes out to. Please go and give them a subscribe and watch their videos and give them a thumbs up. But I'm afraid, guys, we have to go. So we'll see you all on Wednesday.
Aww.
see you next
I know.
Wednesday. Y'all be safe.
Bye bye, guys.
Take
Bye.
care.